I think the first area we're going to look at is strengths, and particularly looking at key marketing innovations that some of the festivals have been implementing recently. So I think I'm going to start off with Amanda. Amanda, could you just give us some insights into some of the latest things you've been doing at the Book Festival?
Okay, hello. The Book Festival, first of all, I'll do a bit of background, is a fantastic tented village of venues and cafes and bookshops, and it all takes place in the centre of Edinburgh in Charlotte Square Gardens. And in that space, we have every August about 800 authors that we invite from countries across the world who come and do events with us. They do 750 events over 17 days. And so really our challenge has always been, first of all, it's very popular, but it's all in this one limited capacity space, and our largest venue is 570 seats. So there is a lot of demand for tickets, and one of our challenges is how do we get people to have more access to those events, to those authors. They're one-off events. It's not like a theatre performance where you've got a show with 17 different performances of that same show. It happens once as a general rule. So in the largest venue, that's 570 seats, 570 people, end of story. So some author might have travelled all the way from Brazil, 570 people get to see that person live. So we've been pondering this challenge and trying to do lots of different things. We record our events. And we've been recording our events, audio recordings, since the early 90s. And so we have a vast archive of audio recordings from all sorts of fantastic writers, people who are now not with us, people like Muriel Spark, Harold Pinter, Susan Sontag, some really, really great literary names. And this archive is sitting on mini discs, on cassettes, on VHS tapes, on any number of digital sort of things that have gone on through the ages. And so we're thinking, well, this is a fantastic repository, and we have these challenges of access to events. How do we engage more people more widely in what we do? How can we get more people seeing those events, those authors? And so we started thinking with technological innovation, and going back to what Dr. Todd was saying earlier about experiential marketing and different experiences and people consuming things in different ways. And also the trends of curating your own experiences. We have started working on a book festival Spotify. So we're in the early planning stages of this now. It's going to be a while before we get there at the end. There are lots of challenges and hoops to jump through along the way. But we've started setting it up so that we can, first of all, digitize all of those hundreds of events, because we have hundreds of events every year. There are lots of issues around rights. There's also funding issues, of course. We're not necessarily looking to commercialize this. That would cause a lot of other rights issues later on down the line. But the idea is that on a platform somewhere will be a repository of all of these events. This could be part of Scotland's National Archive, for instance. So it would be of benefit to students, to people studying different literature, as well as just purely being a way of entertaining yourselves. So you could curate your own playlists, going on a long car journey. The great thing about Book Festival events is they're fantastic to just listen to, because they are conversations, they're people talking about writing, about their work, about their lives. Sometimes there are debates about different topical subjects that have happened. So historically, they're quite interesting. So you could go into the Book Festival Spotify, we'll have to think of a different name, and curate your own playlist for whatever journey you're doing, whatever you happen to be doing at that time in a park on a sunny afternoon. And we will do curated lists. We will curate some of the lists as well to kind of guide you through that process. So that's where the Book Festival is at the moment with what we're doing.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. So look out for that, the Book Festival Spotify. Elizabeth, the Fringe?
Innovation at the Fringe.
Yeah.
Hello. So I guess the Fringe is a bit of a different beast to any of the other festivals that we have here in Edinburgh because it's an open access festival. And that essentially means that we're not programmers. We don't choose the work that takes part. We're very much custodians of the festivals and facilitators and supporters. So it's not up to us who decides to be in the Fringe or who decides to be in the programme. And that means that we can't actively innovate in the arts. Our job is to bring, I guess, make sure Edinburgh is open to people to come to take part and to make sure that the public can actually find that work. And so we spend a lot of our time trying to make it as easy as possible for audiences to find the work they want to see. Our role at the Society is one that is impartial. So I can never tell you what's good or what's bad or indifferent or what to see. So you'll never, if you look at any of our social media accounts, you'll never see us saying you should go and see this great show. It's very much about the experience of the festival and to make it easy for you to decide what to see. And as part of that, excuse me, we a few years ago invested in an app as a starting point for that, and we're in the process of completely redesigning that. And that's just as technology has moved on. When we originally introduced the app back in 2009-10, I think it was basically a program on your phone. And now, of course, we have apps. Everybody has apps. You probably use apps every 5 minutes of your day. And we've looked at the technology and we've brought in a variety of different ways to allow you to go from sort of 3,000 shows down to, you know, the 2 or 3 that you want to pick out. And that's been done through huge investment in technology. So we completely redeveloped our database for people registering their shows. So if you want to bring a show to the Fringe anywhere in the world, you can log on to our system and you can actually input all your data in relation to your show, and that will drag through automatically with a little bit of help from some people in the Society to our programme. And through that capture of data, we capture everything from the themes in your show to the content to where you're from to the accessibility actually of the show and the space and things like that. And that allows us to create systems on our website and on our app that means you can put filters in place. So if you're only here for 2 days and you're bringing a 5-year-old and you need level access, you can pop that into our website. And for this year, coming soon, into our app, and it will take the listings from something which most people find quite unwieldy at sort of 3,000 shows to a manageable number to allow you to make informed choices. So we're very much about getting the audience here and the work here to come together without actually telling you or suggesting what you see.
Okay, thank you. Kirsty, so obviously very close to the film festival now.
Yes, terrifyingly close. I was asked to talk a little bit about what we're doing with our archive stuff, really touching on what Amanda's doing a lot. We're just recognising that we have lots of stuff in various places that's actually really interesting for people to see. So we sort of initially started a little unlocking our archive social media campaign just by posting various images that we have and nice little bits of memorabilia that sort of Louise talked about earlier. And it kind of that was released to sort of celebrate our 70th edition, which is this year, looking forward to our 75th edition, and just recognising that showing people the really exciting stuff the festival has done over the last 70 years makes it much more accessible for people and allows them really to understand what we're trying to achieve and what our brand stands for. Sort of the development of that was, as Amanda's sort of working on as well, is looking to digitise our archive and just make that available for everybody. So we're working with the University of Edinburgh on that. And further developments in that project are looking to gather memories from the public. So we've launched a little website asking people to submit memories and images and any video footage they might have just of the past festivals. And so we're looking to sort of gather a sort of oral history of the festival as well from the people that have taken part in it. So that's guests or people that have just come to see films and things like that. So yeah, it's a really exciting time.
Good.
We're getting lots of nice memories from people, so happy days.
Yeah, so if you've got any memories of the film festival, forward them to Kirsty.
edfilmfestmemories.org.uk.
Okay, good. And then finally, Owen.
So at the Science Festival, just to give you a bit of context as well, the Science Festival happens for 2 weeks over Easter. We've got about 250, 260 events happen over the 2 weeks. Traditionally, the Science Festival has been family focused. And in the past 5 years, we've developed an adult program. And the challenge we have, one of the many challenges we have is about enabling audiences to realize that there's so much to the Science Festival. So we have club nights, we have food events as part of GastroFest, we have video game design workshops, as well as then bringing in the leading voices of a whole range of different areas of science to talk on their expertise. So one of the things we looked at this year was trying to kind of get people past the doorstep, I guess, and to engage with how much is happening at the Science Festival, and to do it in a fun and friendly way. So to kind of make it not seem daunting and not feel like you needed a PhD to attend the Science Festival. You don't, and I won't get you free tickets. People have tried. So what we looked at was, and actually when I first came on, it was like, oh, we need an app, let's get an app. So I picked up the phone to Elizabeth and I was like, you've got a cool app, how does that work? And Elizabeth said, loads of money, we need loads of money. This is not cheap. But we were, so that kind of ruled that out in the first instance because we deal in smaller numbers at the Science Festival. But we, working with an Edinburgh Festival's Innovation Fund that was supported by Scottish Enterprise, we had a small pot of money to play with something. So we developed what I guess the best way to describe it is Tinder for Science Festival events. So swipe right for science. It was a really, really interesting process actually to start on something going, oh, I think this might be an interesting idea. So I'm not fully aware of Tinder, but that's what I keep telling my wife. But I am aware there's a really interesting company based in Edinburgh called Malsey, and they are Tinder for shopping. And I know the guys who worked in that, so I kind of have an idea of how that might possibly translate for events. We worked with a fab company called InGenerator, who develop what's known as the festival's API. So they compile all of the Edinburgh Festival's listings and supply it as a feed to different outlets. So they were really well versed in working with the data and what could be possible. So the end result was that we had a mobile website as opposed to an app. And the interesting thing, actually, if anyone is looking at developing apps, was the barrier to download. What is the payoff for us? Am I getting enough value out of it? So in the interest of easy access and everything, we created something called SciSpy, which allowed you to go onto the website and it brought up an image and one line of text describing the event, and if you swiped right, you were shown another event that was kind of related. And all that was built from a listings engine at the back of our website, so some of that kind of hard work had already been done, and it was just about channeling that information through a different model. So the aim was to get people to kind of discover more of the program than they might already do, and to attract kind of usual non-attenders. And it was really popular. People looked at 19 events on SciSpy because you could do it quickly and get a better sense of the program than the average website visit, which was to look at 4 or 5 events. So it was, and again, more than anything, it was a kind of a first step at furthering kind of mobile engagement with audiences. So we'll hopefully develop them next year and take those learnings.
Brilliant. Okay, so I think that's really interesting, isn't it, that a lot of those innovations were digital. So maybe that's something we can come back to, and I suppose it ties in with some of the things that Louise was saying when we get to the questions. But there's a few more questions from me first. So Following on from that, maybe I'll start with you, Owen, in terms of what do you think are the main sort of challenges? And I mean, obviously you just talked before, didn't you, about cost in terms of implementing some digital initiatives. But, you know, what other sort of weaknesses and challenges do you think there is to do a lot of innovative things for our festivals and events?
I think one of the challenges is that all kind of innovation happens in stages. So you do something, you learn from it, you kind of change a few things and you learn again. And the difficulty with being involved in an event that happens once a year is you've got that one squeeze point to test something and then you wait an entire year before you can try it again. So either whether you end up working with other events or there's a way to find time to pilot elsewhere before you hit it might be an approach, but that is one of the kind of key challenges. You just don't have that iteration time to learn and work, and it's spaced out accordingly.
Okay, thanks. Kirsty, anything?
I think just touching on what Louise mentioned as well, and the sort of theme of this morning is the experiential thing. I think for us it's quite challenging to come up with different ways of showing films, because essentially it's in a black box and people want more. Yeah, I think that's quite a challenge for us, and also we are faced with video on demand, so lots of people just want to watch films on Netflix or one of these sorts of channels. But I was just sitting thinking when Louise was talking about an event, and it's not necessarily to do with marketing, but it's an interesting sort of partnership that Owen and I worked together on screening a screening of The Martian in the middle of the Grand Gallery at the National Museum of Scotland, and there was a live feed to Tim Peake going up into the International Space Station. So it was just a really interesting way of tying in what both our festivals do in a really interesting location, and sort of that added value thing, that experience that people are really looking for. So yeah.
Okay, Elizabeth.
I'm just going to pick up on something that Owen said as an example, because you know, when you're in a festival, it's once a year. You end it. You have to very quickly review it, and then you have to put in place the learnings for the next year. But very, very quickly, you're into that delivery schedule, and you don't have time to really think too much outside what you've done and what's familiar, because you're very, very busy. In 2012, when social media was really going a bit crazy and everyone was very excited by it, we thought it'd be a good idea to introduce the concept of being able to buy tickets through Facebook, and spent, you know, quite a significant amount of money developing that, which took significantly longer than we anticipated, which in the world of technological development is generally how it goes. You think it'll take 2 weeks and it takes 2 months. And we launched it at the start of the festival. And by the end of the festival, I think we'd sold 12 tickets or something like that through it. But, you know, it was a learning experience. And, of course, we launched it at the start of the Fringe. And so we thought, well, OK, next year we'll launch it far earlier. We'll give it a lot more attention. People will be more pro the concept of buying things socially, and so we went through a whole other year of it, only to find at the end of that Fringe, I think we'd sold 6 tickets through it. So it was quickly let to die, and interestingly today Twitter's announced that they're going to remove the buy now button. So, you know, things change, and actually in a world of festivals and events and one-off, sometimes you make decisions and you go through that process and you come at the other side and it hasn't worked. But that's a whole, and that was 2 years. So that is kind of a difficulty of trying to be innovative and trying to be forward-thinking and trying to engage new technologies and new things that are out there, only to find that perhaps by the time you've completed them or you get to test them, the audience has moved on quite a bit. So, you know, it kind of happens, and it does make things quite difficult for us.
Okay, good. That's an excellent example, I think. And then finally, Amanda.
And I would add to that, which it kind of brings all of the things together, which is the combination of the yearly event and not having time to pilot. You don't have time to think, so you don't have that kind of creating time. Then you don't have time to kind of really try out anything, because you're on a conveyor belt, this yearly conveyor belt. No sooner is one festival over, you've already started planning the other festival, and then you're straight into delivering the next one. And then so therefore you have to take risks. the Facebook example being one of those, that you're going, right, okay, let's do it, this is what people are doing, etc. And then you're spending lots of money, and you don't have lots of money. So there's the general resources, time, money, people. That's a huge challenge for the festivals. So, you know, we need, if we can find a way of carving out more time for ourselves, I think that would probably be the thing that we'd all wish for.
Okay, brilliant. I've noticed that the questions are starting to come in on Slido, so the technology's working, that's good. So we'll have one more from me, and then we'll go to the audience. So I suppose the final question is linking to what a lot of the panellists have said in terms of, I suppose, sort of future-proofing. So, you know, we've said in the last 10 to 15 years, particularly in the millennium, we've seen huge advances, particularly in terms of digital technology and the way events are delivered. So what do we think about sort of the next 10, 15 years? Do you think there's any sort of other opportunities or threats coming our way? And maybe we'll start with you, Amanda, first this time.
Who knows, I think, is my answer to that. Who knows? I mean, if you look back 10 years and see what people were doing 10 years ago and where we are now, it's completely changed. Things have completely changed. We now know that the idea that you do so many things over a device. We communicate over a device. We watch TV, and we've watched TV programs for a long time. But there's a lot to do with personalisation, creating your own experience out of what is out there that other people are offering. Everything getting smaller, faster, of course. The channel of information, I think that's one of the things that's changed hugely in the time I've been doing event marketing, and that is that you can now take data from any source and aggregate it in any way you want and chuck it out to a consumer in any way that you want. That's one of a huge opportunity. But where will that go in 10 years' time? I don't know. Have no idea. But I do think I think one of the things about live events, the proliferation of festivals, and particularly book festivals are a prime example of this over the last 10 years, across the world. There are so many, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of book festivals across the world now. There didn't used to be. And I think the proliferation of festivals, that face-to-face, shared experience, live in the room with other human beings, contact, is actually the antidote to the technology that sits side by side with it. It runs in parallel with it, and there's a place for both those things. So that you do everything through a machine or a device, versus you are in a room, live experience, atmosphere, etc. And there's something about those two things. I'm not quite sure what in 10 years' time. Who knows? But I think those two things will still exist in 10 years' time.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of the Fringe then, I mean, how many shows are we going to have in the Fringe in 15 years' time?
Who knows? Who knows? I think that one of the things we all need to be really careful of, particularly when we're talking about Edinburgh and its festivals, is complacency about our position. Because, I mean, we sit here representing 4 extraordinary festivals, and we sit here as pretty much, I mean, the Fringe is the mothership of all fringes. The word fringe didn't mean festival until we existed in 1947, and I think that we need to be careful that we just don't make assumptions that it will still be like this in 10, 15, 20 years, and that actually there is a support and a nurturing of what this city has. And there's probably people in this room who are from the city, and probably people who moved here potentially because of the festivals and because of the opportunity to learn about festivals in the World Festival City. And I think we need to continue to support that very, very heavily in every sense. I think the opportunity is actually in things like this, and remembering that although we all have our own place as festivals and events, and I'm not just talking about the 12 major festivals we have, there are many, many other smaller events and festivals that are happening in Edinburgh and Scotland and the UK as a total. Actually working together will be for the benefit, and we already work together very, very closely, and that's done nothing but help me. Owen mentioned the fact that he phoned me to ask about the app. That's the kind of relationships we have to allow Edinburgh to continue to be what it is. And I think that the fact that we have events like this, the fact that we have degrees in festival and event management, and people like you who are interested in it, is actually the amazing positive and what should be an opportunity and a strength for us going forward.
Brilliant, thank you. Kirsty?
It's just really what I talked about earlier, for the sort of challenge for us in this sort of innovation and how people are consuming things is really just, you know, a lot of what we're focusing on, and just looking at, is there an opportunity actually to, while people enjoy that shared experience that Amanda talks about, there are always people that want to go to the cinema, that want to take part in events with fellow humans, but there are also people that want to consume things on their laptops at home. And so we're kind of looking at the potential of having a sort of film festival, but a virtual film festival. So can people access those films from home, kind of thing. So yeah.
Okay, and then finally, Owen. I mean, the Science Festival, probably the baby in terms of the panel, but obviously, again, has developed hugely in the last sort of 25 years. So what's the future hold, do you think?
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing for both the Science Festival and other festivals and events is how the increase in technology helps to tell us more and more about our ticket buyers and our tenders and our customers. So we know if somebody wants to, you know, we're starting to find more information about the time of purchase, what the influences were. I remember when I started out in marketing, it was like, okay, you need 3 pieces of print to engage you, or, you know, if someone's seen a poster and then a flyer and then they say, hey, festival, they're in, you know. And interestingly, now so much of the actual transaction, because the transaction happens digitally, a lot of the cues in the build-up to that we're able to track and hopefully learn from. It's a big data, big crunching challenge, but I'm quite, you know, I'm really interested in where that goes and how we learn more about audiences from their digital behavior as well, their online as well as their offline.
So I've actually got a question for you, Owen. How do you spell Owen's site? So SciSpy.
Oh, SciSpy is SciSpy, and it's on scispy.co.uk, but it is off because we're keeping developments under wraps until next year's festival, sadly. But you can go on there, and I think you can sign up so you're emailed when SciSpy goes live next year. And yeah, if you like something, you swipe it and it goes spy. If you don't like it, you go sci. So, not SCI, but the other one.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, so now it's your time to ask some questions. I'm sure there's lots of burning questions out there. So as I said, we're going to do a combination of questions from the floor. We've got roving mics. We've got Polly on this side. And then also you can use, which I can see lots of people are, so I'll actually bring up some questions that have been used through Slido as well. So who'd like to ask the first question? Who's brave enough? Come on. Ah, yes, Aaron.
Good morning, everyone. This is primarily for Kirsty, I suppose, building on something that Louise had said. How do you view things like a film festival with the emergence of phenomena like secret cinema? So people desiring that immersive experience to see a venue dressed, to see people performing, as well as consuming the original product. How do you feel film festivals might evolve?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something that not in terms of like the sort of people dressing up and all that sort of stuff, but we recognise that, again, that people want added value, they want an experience. So we've, the last couple of years, screened a film with a live orchestra. So we worked with the Royal Scottish National Orchestra. So we're doing E.T. this year. Last year we did Back to the Future. So yeah, just recognising that that's definitely something that people want. I would love to see something like secret cinema sort of happening to do with the film festival. That isn't my job. So, but yeah, it's certainly something that people have talked about, that we are aware of. And again, just touching on that recognition that people are wanting to consume things in different ways. Yeah, sorry, that's not much of an answer, but yes, we are aware of it and definitely are looking to expand people's experiences of just watching a film.
Does anybody else want to comment on? No? Let's go to the next question. Yeah, okay. Yeah. If you could introduce yourself as well, sorry.
Okay, hi, I'm Torquil and I work for a sports body and we do an annual sort of traditional sports event every year. And I'm just sort of thinking, you guys, you're the big fish in terms of events and event budgets and things like that. But for a smaller event, what are the quick wins, the cheap and easy innovations that we should be looking at with, because obviously we've got a lot less money to spend on it, just to the panel.
Okay, good question. So yeah, how can small events use marketing effectively?
I think you need to look at your data for starters. I mean, presumably you're collecting it in some way, shape or form from ticketing or something along those lines, and that will actually help direct your budget, whatever that may be. I mean, yes, we probably all do, relative to you, have quite big budgets, but we all work on actually very surprisingly small budgets for what we do, genuinely. I mean, I used to work at Tesco Bank and it shocked me how little money I have now. But yes, I would look at your data and actually consider where people are coming from and actually look at how you can use that to best effect. And, if you can, I would suggest that you take what budget you have and work with a local agency or something like that to allow you to get the best possible buying rates if you're looking at actually actively marketing it, because you will get better things through an agency. You might have to pay a little percentage, but you'll get the best of the buying rates that you can get out there. And when it comes to your social, focus your attention on a couple of networks rather than trying them all, because presumably you have quite a small team as well. Yeah, so, actually focus your attention on where people are coming from through your data. Try and get the best buying rates you possibly can through an agency, and you only use a small number of social networks rather than going across them all, because it will just take up too much of your time.
Also, I think another sort of easy win is look around you and see who you can work with and who you can partner with. I think that's really, really key. And also to just gain the support of people around you is really important. And it's amazing how many more people you can reach through other people and other organisations that might want to work with you.
Yeah, contract arrangements, go to newspapers, you offer tickets, those things. But there are simple things you can do in terms of, if you do have a data set, you can upload it into Facebook or Twitter and you can retarget through that, through people that look similar. And it costs peanuts. I mean, literally, you can do it for under £50. And you'll reach thousands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things, that Amanda and Elizabeth have picked up on, and that is the interesting advances in the world of tech, where there are platforms that you can access cheaply, or advances that are being done by the big guys, and you can kind of say, well, okay, a lot of the hard yards have been done by bigger events, but the actual initial concept of something is it's not expensive for us to execute on it. On working with suppliers and all of that kind of stuff, I find that if it's a project that catches people's imagination, then that's really where you can work with people who are willing to go the extra mile for your event. So, or even something small like SciSpy, where, our suppliers in Generator, they got it, and they were like, oh, actually, I think we could do this. And I think, and it's working with people who can bring, who can leverage learning and reach for what you do. I think would be the first place I would start to look. Because you have, an event that's both prestigious and well-known, and it'll be really interesting to find out who wants to develop something interesting on it.
Yeah, just another thing, there's places like, Codebase and things like that, but actually the universities quite often look for projects to support in technology and people who are doing their masters or PhDs and things like that, and actually can work really, really well for both of you because it benefits on each side. Our original app pretty much came from somebody who was looking to start their business in app development and were really interested in the fringe, and it came from a bit of a pub conversation many years ago.
I think that's another thing to say, actually. We're in a university city with a lot of talented young people who are starting out. So if you can try and tap in to somebody who is just at the beginning stages of doing something, they'll generally do, they'll use you, that you'll be using them, they'll be using you, and you'll both get something out of it. And it'll cost you a lot less than if you were just going to an established agency or I don't know, Coda or whatever.
I just wanted to mention as well opportunities to gather research on your audiences and perhaps what their barriers are for attending. I worked with Louise on a live project through Napier University, and we did a lot of research on various bits and bobs of our festival, but again, that was free research. We're scratching their back, they're scratching our back, and it's a really useful way to just find out what people think of your event or why they're maybe not attending, that sort of thing.
Great, okay. Some good tips there, I think. So I'm going to go to Slido now. So the first one's a bit controversial. Why are the panellists saying they don't have time? Isn't that true of all arts organisations? But at least with events, they have a year to plan. So, don't know if anybody wants to make a comment on that, or we can
I think,
move over it.
Yeah, I think we all work in this world because we're really passionate about it and we care deeply about what we do. And I think that every single year you see things you can do better, and so you take on more, but you don't take on more staff. So actually, you're delivering more every year with the same amount of time. And I think that it's not a grumble that we don't have a lot of time. It's just the facts of the business we work in, and as a result, we push ourselves quite hard.
Okay.
I think it's very much about time to play, you know. So particularly in summer festivals, I think were you saying it's 2 weeks, maybe in September,
2 weeks.
to start, before you go on the system, going right. We need to plan this. We need to start building in systems for people to enter the festival. All of that kind of stuff. So it's really, it's ridiculous to say, oh, we work in these really. For these really creative festivals, and yet we can be guilty of not giving ourselves the creative time to play with ideas and develop stuff. So, and as Elizabeth said, it's just the nature of wanting to do as much as you possibly can.
And actually, if you look at each Edinburgh Festival, for the output, the number of events, the number of artists, the number of the visitors that we attract, and then you look at how many people work in the core teams of those festivals. It's tiny. It is tiny compare it to any other environment, which isn't an arts environment. And it is true, you're right, it's true for arts organisations across the board, arts organisations. I used to work in the theatre, and absolutely the time was always an issue there too. You don't have enough staff you don't have enough staff hours to do the playing, the creativity, the thinking, the planning, the trial, the error, the learning experiences. You're constantly on a conveyor belt. And that was true when I worked in the theatre, which was a year-round producing theatre and receiving house, and it's the same, and it's true for the festival. Yeah.
Okay, we've got a question from Julia, Festivals Edinburgh. So, can experience marketing be over-designed? You know, we've talked a lot about design. Is there a risk of sophisticated audiences feeling creeped out, or the experience loses authenticity?
Personally, I'd say yes. Yeah. I think absolutely. Talking about specifically about the book festival, going back, I don't know, 20 years or so, there were still tents in a garden, but they were canvas tents, and it was a little bit like, a campsite. I mean, it was a nice campsite, a smart campsite, but nevertheless, it was tent flaps, and you were sitting on the grass with chairs on the grass, so it was quite homemade, I suppose. And quite a few of our audiences still say they remember, it's nostalgia slightly, I suppose, but they remember it wasn't as slick, it wasn't as organised, and they liked that. They liked the comforting kind of personal, it feels like you're part of a family feeling of it, rather than it's much more slick, it's got there are rules and boundaries and cues, and there's a proper door into the tent, and it feels like a structure rather than a little jaunt out to the country. I think absolutely, from a personal point of view, I personally wouldn't want it all really designed, but yeah.
I think as well the audience isn't shy in telling you what they don't like, and so we see lots of really innovative, interesting, site-specific work that comes to the Fringe, and there are audiences that just don't like it, can't cope with it, don't enjoy it, it's over-designed, it's too much for them, and you've got others that love it. So there's definitely a balance there, but I think, yes, for certain audiences, absolutely.
I think when it comes to sort of adding elements to an experience, it's what is the essence of what we're trying to deliver? And does any additions enhance and help deliver the essence of that event in a better way? Or is it just, let's have a flavoured ice cream that's the same flavour as the colour of the programme or whatever? That's mine, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of reducing it down to what is the essence of your event, and can these enhancements add to that? And if not, put the ice cream away.
Yeah.
We actually are running a competition with Graham's to come up with a sort of cinema-themed flavour ice cream. So we have nachos, hot dogs, and popcorn, which is slightly more palatable.
Yeah. Brilliant. And then we've got, I thought they were quite interesting, a few questions about free events. I think probably most of the people as part of their programme will do free events. So do they change the value of the experience? And what was the other one? And also is the engagement sort of different if it's free? Yes. Yeah.
For us, it's really important. Our outdoor screenings that we do that are free in St Andrews Square are reaching a totally different audience to who our paid-for cinema screenings are reaching. So the people that come to the cinemas are very much cinephiles into film, and the people that are coming to the outdoor screenings, it's a much different thing. So it doesn't devalue. I think it actually really helps us become more accessible, while not taking away from from the sort of artistic integrity of the programme.
I think it depends on the nature of the event as well. So whether it's quite an informal event where it's unticketed, for instance, where it's quite casual, you can kind of drop in, drop out, or whether it's a ticketed event where you have to buy a ticket in advance, but it's still free. And we do both at the Book Festival, and we find exactly what Kirsty said with the drop-in, more casual events, you will definitely draw from a wider demographic. But certainly the things that you have to book in advance, what we find is the same people are buying those tickets, people who can certainly afford to be paying for the paid-for events, but they don't value them because they're free. So then every event that is on, you can pretty much guarantee that it will be maybe 30 or 40% full because people don't turn up. And so then you have a kind of a challenge, an operational challenge to do with on the day, because there will be a queue of other people who wanted tickets for that event, and they're standing there looking through the windows of a venue, perhaps, depending on what venue it is, and seeing that it is less than half full. And yet we don't know whether people are going to turn up until the last minute or not. So, yeah, there's definitely people, each individual has their own value perception of what they're buying, whether that's free or paid for. Again, a book festival event, if it's one person on stage, their value perception is going to be different than if it's an all singing, all dancing musical. The fact of the matter is, putting on the book festival is still really, really expensive. So there's a limit to how much we can charge for tickets, for instance, because people aren't necessarily going to come and see a debut or an unknown Afghan author in this country, one person on stage, and pay 25 quid a ticket. Some might, but generally speaking, they won't. So we have so there is definitely an income expenditure challenge.
We've got lots of questions about technology, so we probably haven't got time to go through them all, but just to sort of get a feel for the sort of questions people are asking. So app development, I think we've talked about a little bit already, so we can probably leave that. Increasing move to digital experiences. So this is obviously a really key one, how that's going to impact on people attending live events. And also, is that move pushing certain segments of the audience out who maybe feel they can't engage with that technology? So maybe any thoughts from the panel about any of those questions?
I don't think it's about pushing people out. I think it's about making sure you bring everybody in. I mean, we still have a physical box office, we still have a physical programme, we have an app, we have a website, we have phone lines. Actually, the whole point of what we do in marketing is to make sure the consumer has a channel of choice when it comes to engaging with us. And actually, it's not about moving people away from those channels necessarily, although it absolutely has, as technology becomes more in our pocket, we're using it more frequently. And also as the age demographic changes and younger people, have had phones since they were 10 and 12 are obviously more likely to use those types of things than necessarily the older audience who've taken to it. But it's very much about making sure you have something for everyone, and actually about, I would say to a certain extent, about being more inclusive and about being more accessible through as many channels as you possibly can. So I certainly don't think it's pushing audiences out in any way.
Have we got any more questions from the floor? Yeah, one here.
Hi, I'm Gareth. This kind of goes back to what Kirsty said about your free events. I was just interested to ask, you were saying you have a very different demographic between your event-based stuff and the programme for your film festival. Have you seen, is there a good feeder for that audience? Does the free event feed into the next year? Does it feed across and grow? Like if you're tracking your data for sign-ups per se, can you see if there's been a growth from that? Has it?
It's really difficult for us to sort of track what's happening in terms of the journey between our people going from the free outdoor events to actually purchasing tickets, just because there are no real ways of gathering that data. So we do a bit of research. So we have people out with iPad questionnaires and stuff like that at the outdoor events, and then the following year we do a big festival questionnaire, and we'll ask, like, have you been to... So it's not massively scientific, it's just asking people to remember, and often what happens is people go, yeah, I was there last year, and actually it was 7 years ago, because I do that all the time, like, yeah, I was at the theatre last year, and it wasn't last year at all. So yeah, I mean, we really just try and track that journey by asking people questionnaires and running research, and I understand that, that it does cost quite a lot of money, so it might not, your organisations might not have that budget for that sort of thing, but that's kind of how we track it. Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting thing about what you're kind of not positing or pitching or whatever is that are we changing our audience? So we have two different types of audience members. One goes to free events, one goes to other events, and then we are somehow or other transforming one into the other. I think there's possibly stages with that, and that may be about free and then free ticketed and then nominal, or tickets that happen to be funded, and it's, if the data provides us with the information to be able to track that, then that would be quite interesting. From the Science Festival's point of view, I don't think we have the data, like Kirsty said, to kind of give us a clear indication of that yet.
Can I just add from a fringe perspective, because we last year had over 700 free shows in the fringe programme, as just over 3,000 shows, and I think that there's been an attitudinal shift certainly in audiences from a fringe perspective towards free shows and towards their value, which is very, very positive. And actually what we're seeing a lot of is award-winning comedians choosing to go into free models, and actually I think that in itself is opening up the market and actually bringing new audiences in. And certainly I did an event recently with some 13 and 14-year-olds who went to Firhill High School in Edinburgh, and asked all of them if they'd ever been to the Fringe. Now, it was sort of 50-50 split, but the ones that had, when I asked them what they'd been to, what they described was free street performance. And I think that in itself is brilliant, because it's that stepping stone into whatever part of the arts and the festivals that they are interested in. So I definitely think it is. It's just it's hard for us to track. But certainly we've seen a big change in numbers and the number of free events in the Fringe, the number of people saying they're going to free events. So I think that can only be a really positive thing for the arts in general, which 20 years was seen as quite elitist.
Okay, I've not got time to go through all the questions, unfortunately. We've had some really good questions, but I'm going to end by asking each of our panellists to 30 seconds or less. What's your favourite marketing innovation that you've seen used at another event and wish you'd thought of it first? So, Owen, start with you.
We're going this direction.
Yes.
One of the things I've seen, and it actually wasn't a festival event, it was a conference event that I attended, but what this conference provider realised, and it was tech conference, so you would think that all the important stuff was like Wi-Fi access. Actually, the Wi-Fi was terrible. But what they had realized was that the key sort of value add for them was about building connections and helping set up deals. So they had put a lot of time and effort into connecting I think it was maybe 5,000 people, all the different attendees in advance. So they kind of had and it ended up being an app. So it was a sort of an event app that you downloaded, but it you put in who you worked for, what areas you worked in, the type of people you were trying to meet, and then suggested people and facilitated those connections, which for an event where there's thousands of people and you can only see so many and you're trying to get the best value out of it, it was a clever approach to that solution.
Brilliant. Elizabeth?
Do you know, I really want to say something super clever, but I actually don't have anything. I think, and it's totally not, again, I'd love to say something technological because I love sci-fi, clearly. But actually one of the most amazing things is fostering that sense of community when an event is happening, so everyone's aware of it, even if they're not part of it, which allows them to want to be part of it. And if you go to somewhere like South Africa, when their festivals are on, the second you arrive in the airport to the second you get to the city, to the second that you're on the bus, anything like that, it all tells you that these festivals are happening in the location you're in. And I think that's something which, although doesn't appear to be massively innovative, is really important to the sense of the city's sense of it and the community and the part of it that you feel when you arrive. And I think that would be a great thing for us to have as part of this city.
Great. Amanda?
I'm going to say something that the film festival did a few years ago, but it took quite a lot of time again.
That's why it doesn't happen
that's why it doesn't happen. Which was the director was forcibly shut in a room for about 3 days by his marketing manager, and he mapped out all different connections, really kind of deep, intelligent, kind of artistic connections between different aspects of the programme. And then that kind of was all rolled together, and all those kind of connections were rolled into a little sort of widget thing. And you would go online as a prospective festival goer and say, I really loved these 3 films. And you could pick, any films that you've seen, The Third Man, Gladiator, and I don't know, Sunshine on Leith, say, for instance. And then you'd press a little button and it would go, and spat out the other end would give you a list of suggested films in the programme that you could go and see. And it wasn't obvious what the connections were, but there were connections. So it might have been something to do with the school the school that the director came out of, or the way the cameramen worked, or something, I don't know, whatever. Something quite deep and meaningful and artistic and literary and film buffy would come out. So yes, do it again, because I thought that was absolutely fabulous. For somebody who doesn't know a huge amount about film, it really worked. Cool.
Okay, finally.
And mine is, and I'm boring Elizabeth all the time with talking about how amazing I think their app is, and I know they're developing it, but not that I wish I'd thought of it, because if I'd thought of apps, I'd be far richer than I am now. But I just think the way that their apps just perfect for just someone that's trying to find something nearby, or by theme, or whatever it is. I just think it's really clever.
And then if you could wrap up the Sci-Spy
I like Sci-Spy
with an international festivals mood thing that they did with the film festivals, and your app. God, we'd be
Okay, so I'd like everybody to join me in giving a huge thanks to the panel.